For the year of 2021, there were two books that really surprised me. Lies of Locke Lamora and Prince of Thorns. And these two books were so good, I think at this point I have made both combined about 10 videos. So this is going to be hopefully the last video about just the Prince of Thorns, not the Broken Empire trilogy. In the summer, I'll pick up the second book. And I just cannot seem to really stop thinking about this book. And also Lies of Locke Lamora, The Gentleman Bastards. And I want to really recommend this book to you. And I'll detail why you should read it. And the first reason why is because, first of all, a lot of fantasy stories out there, they are obsessed. They are obsessed with likable protagonists. There is this unspoken rule. If there is going to be a protagonist in a fantasy book, they have to be somewhat likable. And I say all of that. I say all of that. And Mark Lawrence is the beautiful example with Georg Ankrath of where I'm coming from. Because Georg Ankrath, you cannot really like this guy, but you have to understand him. And so this is what I'm talking about. In The Prince of Thorns, and I hope in the second book, there seems to be a focus on having an understandable protagonist rather than a relatable or a likable protagonist. And this to me is very crucial. I don't know, maybe it's cultural, maybe it's just personal preference. However, I love this way more than just, likable, relatable protagonists. If your protagonist has nothing except just, oh, that's the chosen one that will save us from the Dark Lord, you can 100% expect me to be extremely disappointed. You can 100% expect me to be extremely pissed off as I'm reading your book. You can really never like Georg Ankrath, and I emphasize this. And if you are going into it, do not really go into it trying to relate to Georg Ankrath. You haven't had any of the experiences to relate to him. Number two, you can't really like him too much because he does a lot of nefarious, terrible things. However, if you read the story, you will notice that Mark Lawrence writes the story such that, one more time, Mark Lawrence will write the story such that you can understand where Georg is coming from. He is in a merciless world and he has to be merciless in order to find justice. And I recommend that if you're going into this book, and I recommend that you go into it, and if you're going into it, I really advise you to not expect to find, Randall Thor or, Jon Snow, a very likable character that you can put yourself into, or the Harry Potter. You're not gonna find that. You'll be terribly disappointed. In fact, a lot of the reviews out there about the book seem to be obsessed and seem to be very angered by the fact that they could not relate and the fact that they could not like Georg Ankrath, and that put them off the book. However, in art, I really think it is best if you always write. This is a very extreme opinion of mine, if you always write protagonists that have to be understood, because that way you can have much more complex material. You can have much more complex, beautiful stories. And so this book has an understandable protagonist. It does not have a likable protagonist. It does not have a relatable protagonist. And therefore, in my opinion, not Randall Thor, but Georg Ankrath is perfect. And then the next thing that I think you should read this is the villain of the story, because the villain of the story is not obsessed of taking over the world. Yeah, he is really not obsessed to take over the world. He is not interested in that. In fact, it's not even a possibility. And it means that the villain attacks the protagonist. This is a principle that is very crucial, in my opinion, because when villains attack the protagonist, that is the villain initiating the protagonist. Okay, the villain is the inciting incident, and the inciting incident for Georg Ankrath is his uncle. And this is crucial. This is beautiful, because a story with a beautiful villain is a beautiful story, because that story will always be properly motivated. It will always be properly structured, because the villain is just such a beautiful tool to structure a story. And that is what ends up happening here. Georg Ankrath's entire life has been ruined by the villain, and he wants vengeance. And then there's this other theme that I think you will grow to appreciate the more you delve deeper into the story. And it is the world building in this story is very unique. In fact, it's a post-apocalyptic world, It is entirely feudalistic. The entire system is feudalism, and it is much like a lot of other fantasy stories, except with the background, and also a lot of the world is just beautifully realized, because it's not idealistic, it's realistic. And the people, the conflicts, and the rations and the famines that they seem to be going through, it is beautifully exposited, number one. Number two, it is beautifully shown to you, and so the world feels alive. In fact, too alive, way too alive. Yeah. And so the world building in here is beautiful, right? And the final thing that I want to really bring your attention to is the author Mark Lawrence himself and the way he writes. His writing style is beautiful. His voice is beautiful. And the way he uses the English language to describe stuff is just so good. It is really, really, really remarkably good, okay? And this was his debut. You just have to appreciate when a debut author just comes out right off the park and just knocks people who have been writing for 40, 50 years, more than they have been writing, just blow them out of the water with their writing style. This happens with, Barty Rothfuss. Mark Lawrence is another author who has this ability, who has an ability to write prose so beautiful that his debut is better than 98, 99% of fantasy books out there. So the voice is beautiful, the protagonist is beautiful, the world building is beautiful, the villain is beautiful. This book is beautiful. I hope that you will pick it up. I hope that you will read it, and I hope that you will enjoy it. But remember, you should not go into this expecting to relate and like Georg Ankrath. You should go into this trying to understand the protagonist. It will help you a lot, because it will make sure that you do not fall into the trap like 90% of people who have hated this book have fallen into, okay? This is not light-hearted material. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will pick up Prince of Thorns and enjoy yourself. All right, have a nice day. Bye.